So, Swara Bhaskar, who is an actress in Bollywood, recently wrote a letter, an open letter, to Sanjay Leela Bhansali, the director of the movie Padmavat, about how after watching the movie, she felt like she had been reduced and her whole gender had been reduced to just one organ. Because unfortunately, the left has turned into virtue signaling Olympics. So we're going to talk about that letter and we're going to offer a rebuttal to that letter. So, my name is Sham Sharma. Welcome to the Sham Sharma Show. Hello, and welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Sham Sharma Show. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you. Alright, so like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Miss Swara Bhaskar, who is an actress in Bollywood, she wrote an open letter to Sanjay Leela Bhansali expressing her concerns about the movie and expressing how after watching the movie, she felt like she had been reduced to just a vagina. So at the outset of the letter, she congratulates Sanjay Leela Bhansali for getting the movie released, and she writes, and in this tolerant, in quotes, India of today, where people are being murdered over meat and school children are targets for avenging some archaic notion of male pride, that your film even managed a release. Alright, so of course, I agree with her in the sense that I have been very vocally against the Karani Sena on this show here. I have said that what they're doing is bullying and what they're doing is bordering on terrorism, if not terrorism. And that these people should be punished, these people should be arrested, and these people should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Having said that though, two things. She talks about people being murdered over meat, obviously talking about the akhlaq issue and some of the alleged beef lynchings across the country. But she never really talks about the threats that certain sections of the population face when they write something about another culture, when they just write something about Prophet Muhammad, how people gather outside their houses, call for their heads, and in many instances have been killed over talking about the Prophet. Also, how she doesn't talk about hundreds of temples being desecrated or destroyed in India for the past so many years. Can you imagine the ruckus? Can you imagine the absolute hell that would be created if one Muslim monument or one Muslim mosque was desecrated? But in India, it happens to temples routinely, but she doesn't seem to talk about that. So why are you presenting just one side of the story in your letter? And you keep talking about some notion of male pride, but the princess of an erstwhile Jaipur royal family, she came out and she also criticized the movie, and she also criticized the portrayal of Hindu Rajput princesses or queens in that movie. But you're not going to mention her, because a woman that does not agree with your cause is, of course, a slave to the patriarchy, and her opinion doesn't matter. She says, perhaps it is because of this attachment and concern that I had for the film, and I am so stunned having watched it. And perhaps that is why I take the liberty and have the temerity to write to you. I will try and be concise and direct, though there is much to say. Women have the right to live, despite being raped, sir. Wait, hang on. Is there some sort of a rule in India, or is there some law in India that states that women, if they get raped, do not have the right to live, or if if they get raped, should be put down? Is there some sort of a law like that exists? I'm not aware of one. If there is a law like that exists, please let me know in the comment section below. Then she says, women have the right to live despite the death of their husbands, male protectors, owners, controllers of their sexuality, whatever you might understand men to be. Women have the right to live independent of whether men are living or not. Women have the right to live, period. And again, this part doesn't really make sense to me, because I don't think there's any rule in India that says that women don't have the right to live. If you kill a woman, you get the same punishment as if you kill a man. And that is why female infanticide, even though it happens in India, it is illegal by law. Because people realize that men and women should be treated equally under law in India. And I haven't really seen many rallies against equal rights for women and men in India, so I don't know what that point really means. Women are not only walking, talking vaginas. Wait, what? Seriously? Wait, hang on. Let's pull up a picture of a woman. Whoa, she has a face and she has arms and legs. How have I never noticed that before? That's incredible. How have I not noticed those things before? Oh, thank you, Ms. Bhaskar. I really did not realize that. I wish they'd teach these things in biology class. That's incredible. Then she says, you may be wondering why the hell I am going on and on and on about vaginas. Yes, we all do. Because, sir, that's what I felt like at the end of your magnum opus. I felt like a vagina. I felt reduced to a vagina only. It felt like all the minor achievements that women and women's movements have made over the years, like right to vote, right to own property, right to education, equal pay for equal work, maternity leave, the Vishaka judgment, the right to adopt children, all of it was pointless because we were back to basics. What? So just because a movie was released, that means that the right to own property, the right to vote, all of that stuff is now gone? Did the release of this movie somehow take away those rights from the women? What are you talking about? Your film, it felt, had brought us back to that question from the Dark Ages. Do women, widowed, raped, young, old, pregnant, prepubescent, do they have the right to live? Again, nobody is saying that these women do not have the right to live. I do not know where this is coming from. And here's the thing, you're suggesting that rather than committing Jauhar that the women did in these movies, they should have instead lived on, tried to live a life of dignity, right? So let me give you a recent example. And let me not say it because I am a man and I'm part of the patriarchy. Let's just hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
ام صدو بينجي كاتشك إنه سالي وسرها تا بستو شش سالي ام موي إيفادم كرنا باسا دوم برن وسوقتم برين ام جبرنا موسلم برنا مقركي وان مقرد وان جيت وان هم صدا كاتشكيت كاتشكار رجاء شوان كرن بوكوجن ام نت كشتن بس امد برنش وكجاركم باز داش باي بري هكاش خورا بريم هيش ازش مقر درنا كاتم شباكي درنا كاتم ازقرتم وهجتات وكشكز ام سرخه بهايد كرن هربي هنا قيامت فروت النيام بإيجار دان ما.
That lady is Nadia Murad. She is a Yazidi woman from northwestern Iraq. Her village was captured by ISIS, and after ISIS captured her village, all of the men in the village were murdered, and then all of the women were captured and used as sex slaves. So would you rather that woman died on her own terms, died with dignity, or would you rather that woman be taken as a sex slave and treated as a piece of property, treated just purely as a piece of meat, treated as a packet of chips being passed around from man to man to man? Is that what your definition of life with dignity is? Let's hear some more about her life with dignity with ISIS. So Murad was captured, enslaved, sold, raped, and tortured alongside thousands of her people in an effort to decimate her religion. Murad was then taken as a sabiya, which means a sex slave. In the dark, crowded room of a home where she and her and the other women were being held, Murad asked what awaited her. Another woman who had been there longer told her to look for stains on the bathroom wall where others had tried to kill themselves rather than be sold as slaves. I wonder why all these women are trying to kill themselves rather than be sold as sex slaves. Is it because they would rather die with their dignity intact? Otherwise, it would lead to a life of humiliation, of pain, of constant rape and sexual assault. But then again, they might just be slaves to the patriarchy, and you know better, of course, right? Then Murad talks about her owner, the man who owned her as a sex slave. She says, he hit me when he was displeased with the way I cleaned the house, when he was angry about something from work, if I cried or kept my eyes closed while he raped me, she writes. He humiliated her, spreading honey on his toes and making her lick it off. And he always warned her, if you try to escape, you will regret it. I promise you, the punishment won't be good. So that's, of course, her life of dignity after all the men in her village were murdered. So even though she was warned not to escape, she tried to escape anyway. But unfortunately, a guard saw her, and Haji Salman, who was her owner, was summoned, and he whipped Murad's naked body and then let his sentry, 6 of them, 6 people, gang rape her until she was unconscious. Is this the life of dignity, and is this the life of pride that you're talking about? Because it might be my patriarchy-based eyes, but for some reason, I don't see that as a life of dignity. And the other thing I feel like this article is doing is just treating Sati and Jauhar as the exact same thing. Sati is a practice that was practiced in some Hindu communities where a recently widowed woman would immolate herself on the pyre of her recently deceased husband. That practice, of course, was steeped in patriarchy, and that practice was bad. And that practice suggested that a woman's place after her husband has died does not belong in society, and that is a bad practice, which is why that practice was abolished by Hindu reformers and by the British government in the 1800s. And which is why you don't hear a lot of rallies in India about bring Sati back, bring Sati back. You don't see any rallies like that because people realize, because Hindu society in general realizes that was a bad practice, and it's a good thing we got rid of it. Jauhar is different because your city or your castle or your town has been laid under siege by people of a certain religion, and as a woman, you are aware that all the men in the village are going to die. And once all the men in the village die, the men from the other religion are going to come and they will take you and they will use you as a sexual slave. And because you realize that there is no dignity to it, and you realize that there's nothing in that life but shame and humiliation, which is why you take your own life, because you decide to die on your own terms. You decide to die with your pride intact. That's the difference between Jauhar and Sati. And it's very important to make that distinction as well, ma'am. Credit to her, though, she also talks about female genital mutilation as a horrible practice in India as well. So, a lot of people don't talk about that. So credit where credit is due. But then, of course, she goes back to her old rhetoric and she says, you will say that you put out a disclaimer at the beginning of the film claiming that the film did not support Sati or Jauhar. Sure, sir, but you followed that up with a 2-hour, 45-minute long PN on Rajput honor and the bravery of honorable Rajput women who chose happily to sacrifice their lives in raging flames rather than to be touched by enemy men who were not their husbands but were incidentally Muslim. First of all, they were not just gonna touch them. And I think Nadia Murad has made that point abundantly clear. And secondly, not because they were incidentally Muslim, because they were Muslim, is because it was well known, and it still is well known because of ISIS, and it was well known back then as well, that if an invading Muslim army captured an area, they would murder all the men and they would take all the women as sex slaves. That was a very common practice. Well, so that is why women preferred to rather die than be raped every day by a new man. And if that doesn't scream patriarchy to you, if that culture of treating women as a object, treating women as a snack, if that doesn't scream patriarchy to you and Jauhar screams patriarchy, then you are way too far gone on the left. And then she says, God forbid anything untoward happened to me. I would do everything in my power to sneak out of that fiery pit, even if it meant being enslaved to a monster like Khilji forever. Well, hey, again, if that is the life that you would prefer, the life of constant humiliation, the life of constant rape, and the life of constant torture, if that's the life that you would prefer, fine, that's your life. Do what you want with it. But again, don't decide for all women what they should choose and what they should not be choosing. That's what you accuse the patriarchy of doing. So don't do the same thing that you accuse the patriarchy of doing. And that is the problem with the left these days, because Sanjay Leela Bhansali on any day of the week would be a leftist. But the left, unfortunately, is going so far left that it's starting to eat its own people. It's gone so far left that Sanjay Leela Bhansali is a person that people have a problem with now. He's not virtuous enough for you. We are just up against this ideology where if you do not agree 100% with us, then you are just our enemy. So it's very important that we fight this ideology. It's very important that we call out this ideology, and it's very important that we call out dishonest articles like these. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you really did enjoy today's episode, please make sure to thumbs up this show. Please make sure to share the show. Please make sure to subscribe to the show's channel. Again, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next week, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.